We are on episode 4 of season 1 of the Twilight Zone. This is called the 16mm Shrine, named after the 16mm motion picture film. The type of camera that was used to film movies and TV shows back in the day. Well, everyone's moved to digital at this point. Oh, except Quentin Tarantino. He still shoots on film. And this is a complete ripoff of the Billy Wilder film, Sunset Boulevard, released in 1950. This one features Barbara Trenton, an aging film star, where we start the episode, and just like Sunset Boulevard, she's in a smoky room in her mansion, watching films of herself from 20 years ago, and wanting to relive those years. In fact, she's gotten so delusional that she still thinks no time has passed. Not only does she still have the same fan base, but also all of her co-stars in those films still look exactly the same. And she still looks exactly the same. She hasn't aged a day. Well, in her mind, she hasn't aged a day. And from the start of this episode, I started laughing. It's just way too similar to Sunset Boulevard. Sunset Boulevard is one of my favorite films ever. But it looks exactly the same. It has the exact same character. It has the exact same plot. Sunset Boulevard, it was Norma Desmond, who was a silent movie star, and then essentially got kicked out of the business when they went into talking movies. A dynamic that actually makes a lot more sense than what we get in this Twilight Zone episode. So that's the problem. Everything about this episode is not as good as Sunset Boulevard, and yet it copies it completely. So we get to see Barbara Trenton be delusional. She has her agent, Danny Weiss, who seems to also be her butler, because they're copying Sunset Boulevard, and Norma Desmond also had a butler. And he's willing to indulge her in these delusions, just like, okay, I'll stop mentioning Sunset Boulevard, but literally just copies every single character. So her agent helps her in these delusions and tells her that she's pretty and she's still young. The actress playing Barbara Trenton is probably more interesting than the episode herself. It's played by Ida Lupino, who at first I didn't recognize because when I was looking it up, I heard the name and I was like, isn't she a director? And yes, Ida Lupino was an actress, but she's most known for being a director. A girl boss, you might say, directing films in the 50s when basically no one else was doing it. In fact, she'll go on to direct an episode of The Twilight Zone later on, and she will be the only female to ever direct any of the 154 Twilight Zone episodes. Yeah, it was a man's world back then. But Ida Lupino was not some diversity hire. Her movies are actually really good. The movie The Hitchhiker is an extremely intense thriller that deals with the fear people were doing back then, actually hitchhiking in the 1950s. And this time they pick up a psychotic killer. And it's so well shot and acted, you would have no idea this is directed by a woman. She also directed Outrage, Never Fear, the episode The Mask of the Twilight Zone with the psychotic family, and episodes of Bewitched and Gilligan's Island. So a good director, but is she a good actress? And I have to say, not really. She's not really pulling this part off well. First of all, she's not that old. She'd be 40 years old at the filming of this Twilight Zone. And so we're supposed to believe that she's in her 50s or maybe 60s, but she's only 40. And it's one of the many problems of basing an episode on something that a lot of people have already seen. You're going to immediately compare it to that and see that the acting in this one is not as good. Her anger doesn't come off genuine. She's not old enough for the part. She's not really creepy. She's just telling everyone around her that she's still a star. Then she meets one of her co-stars that she used to film movies with, and he's aged 20 years. And she can't believe it. She still remembers him as this spry young buck that she fell in love with during the filming of this movie in the 1930s. And so far this is playing off as just a regular drama, but they do a sci-fi-ish twist at the end. In fact, a twist that they should have done earlier in the episode. She ends up becoming so entranced in her world that while watching one of her movies, she's able to step into the screen and be able to relive those memories. This only happens towards the end, though. If she was able to do that during the course of this episode, it would be much more engaging. Since the movies she's starring in are not real movies, they were shot specifically for this episode. Seeing her go into the movie, interact with the people there, then come back to present day would have been interesting, would have been engaging. But instead, she gets a happy ending where she goes to live with her cowboy co-star in the movie. And that's how we end the episode. So what a 16mm Shrine can I get? I'm going to get a 4. It's a below average episode and is missing the usual creativity and wit that we see from Rod Serling's writing. He obviously is a big fan of Billy Wilder and is like, I'm going to do that exact same thing, except for I'm going to have a twist on it. But any twist that he made didn't really work, and it waits too long to get to the part where something science fiction happens and she's able to go into this film. They should have played on that a lot more. Also, it's not really clear why exactly her career fell off. seems like it did. There's a scene where she wants to be, where they're going to put her in another movie, but she has to play the mom, and she doesn't want to play the mom because she's still, in her mind, 20 years old. But at least with Sunset Boulevard, the transition from silent films to talking films, a lot of the silent film stars went away. That's a completely different dynamic. But here, we don't even give any details, even though she complains the entire time of why her career fell off. Co-star comes to visit her of why his career fell off. Essentially, he left the movie business and he opened up a bunch of grocery stores and he's happy doing that. We get more details from him than we do from her. So, I think a bit unsatisfying, 4 out of 10. So it ends on a nice note, but it's overall an unsatisfying episode. As we see here, Ida Lupino was not only the only woman to direct an episode, The Masks, but also the only person to direct an episode and also star in one. And of course it mentions the similarity to the 1950 Billy Wilder film, Sunset Boulevard. And interestingly, that movie in this episode had the same composer and conductor of the music, Franz Waxman. So since I gave this a bit of a negative review, let's look at a positive one. This person gave it a 9 out of 10. I like this one. Makes me think about all the actors who once were. Ida Lupino shines in this role, and she also directed an episode of The Twilight Zone in an era where there weren't many female directors. There were 0. She was the only person to do it in Twilight Zone. Whenever I watch this episode, it highlights the perils of being too nostalgic. I think about the actors in their heyday and wonder what they're doing now. Maybe they have quit acting to raise a family, pursue another career, or they become production staff. The impression the public has is that because their stars are on TV reruns throughout the years, they're rolling in the money. Not true. I wonder how many actors, actresses, others spend the time watching their own performances in TV or movies. Yeah, how would you not? So I've been covering Are You Afraid of the Dark? I've been looking at where the kid actors ended up, and almost all of them ended up leaving the movie business in the 90s and are on to regular jobs now. So I also wonder about this, which is why I looked it up on the internet. Next up is episode 5 of The Twilight Zone, Walking Distance. An episode that revels in nostalgia, and one that I have seen before and has stuck with me. I really like this episode. A man takes a short 1-mile walk into his hometown and somehow gets transported back in time to relive his youth. And check out our playlist for all the other series we've covered: Monsters, Fear Itself, Tales from the Dark Side, Are You Afraid of the Dark, Mystery Science Theater 3000, Cowboy Bebop, Pet Shop of Horrors. Thanks a lot.